I looked at the sink with the dishes all piled up in it. You know, a lot of improvement this Myrtle had made on the place. But then she wasn't a woman. A woman's a woman, but a cunt is a cunt. And that's what this Myrtle was. She was a cheap piece of tail. You know, I could use on, there wasn't a doubt about that, but if I brought home one to live with, by God, it would have to be one that I was able to feel a little respect for. I went to the screen door to pee. I had to wait several minutes before I could. A long way off, I heard a hound dog baying. Sounded sad. In spite of myself, I went back to my old train of thoughts. It just seemed like my mind was set on the subject. Nothing would stop it. It's like the preacher says. The gates of soul has got to close on the body. Keep the body out, or the body will break them down and overrun the soul and everything else decent in you. The fact of the matter is, though, I never did seem to have any gates to close. No, I was made without them. Some people are, I guess. I'd say to myself, this sort of thing is dirty. And I remember what the preacher had said about closing the gates on the soul, struggling. And I'd reach for the gates to close them and find I hadn't a thing to catch a hold of. I guess my trouble was partly a lack of schooling. Never think of anything much to do but drinking and screwing and doing my damnedest to make something out of the place, but not having much luck at it. I guess if a fellow could pick up a book at night, that ought to make a great deal of difference in him. Oh, I could read. I could make the most out of the words, but dogged if reading would close the gates on the body. Made up stuff is just not satisfying to me. Poker I like to play, but always seem to come out a little at the end of the horn. I like to go into town and look at a movie or a carnival show, but only ever so often. Looking at them screen stars don't close the gates on the body. I don't ever think that it does. There's nothing makes a fellow quite so horny as sitting there in the dark and looking at them beautiful actresses messing around in a little lace step-ins or a fancy wrapper. You come back out and there ain't 1 inch of the soul that ain't overrun by the longings of the body. Well, I was still in the kitchen while the night wore away, but I had a feeling that something was going to happen before the night ended, and I was not mistaken. It must have been about 12:30 when all of a sudden, a big commotion begins. I heard him coughing and then her running and shouting my name in the hall. I just sat tight there, waiting to see what would happen. After a while, she come on down to the kitchen to fill up the water pitcher. "Didn't you hear my calling, you chicken?" she says. I just sat there and looked at her. She filled up the water pitcher and clumped it down on the table. "Lot's took sick," she told me. I didn't say nothing. He seems to be awful sick. I wanted to call a doctor, but he said no. He'd be all right in the morning. I didn't say a thing to her. "What's wrong with him?" she asked me after a while. "He's got TB, I told her. She put on a shocked expression. "How bad is it?" she asked me. I told her they'd let the air out of one of his lungs at the Memphis hospital because the x-rays had shown it was all eaten up with disease. "Why didn't somebody tell me?" she asked. She sat there and whimpered a little, and I said nothing, but I just kept on looking at her. "I've had a bad time," she told me. You don't understand.
how it is with a woman like me. I used to work in a dry goods store in Biloxi.
What, you planning to give me your life story?
No, she said. I just wanted to tell you something. Then I was thin, and I hadn't dyed my hair, and I looked real pretty. I was 15 then, and I didn't go out with the boys. I was just as nice as any girl you could think of. But you can imagine what happened. The man managed the store, kept walking by me, and every time he did, he would touch my body. First on my arm, and then on my shoulder, and finally on my hips. I told my girlfriend about it. Honey, she said, just take him aside and have a sincere conversation. You tell him you're not used to that sort of treatment. So that's what I done. I went to his office at the back of the store. It was late one Saturday in the middle of summer. I said, Mr. Porter, you seem to be taking advantage of the fact that you're my boss, to take some liberties with me, which I don't like because of my decent upbringing. But Charlie just grinned. He walked up to me and he put his hands on my hips. Is this what you mean? He said. And then he kissed me. And then it was all over with me. I tried to walk one way and Charlie pushed me the other. He kicked the office door shut and backed me up against a big roller top desk, and he took me by force right there. He had my cherry right there on that roller top desk. He was a man about 40 with sandy red hair. You know, the sort like a great big bull. And I fell in love with him. I got to admit, he made me so happy that summer, and my memories of it are still the best that I've got. They say you always lose your heart with your cherry. Well, I don't know about that. Some girls don't like it at first, but I got to admit that from the beginning, I loved it. She wiped her eyes on the edge of the tablecloth. Is that the end of the story? No, she said. It was only beginning.